The orange light came on at the same overpass it always did, low fuel. Cass saw it glow up out of the dash as she crested the rise on the freeway coming back from her last client of the day, and she did the thing she always did. She lifted her foot off the gas and let the old Corolla coast down the far side of the hill to save what was left in the tank. Riding on fumes into the last week of the month, she knew that overpass like she knew her own hand. She had been coasting down the back of it for years. She was 57 years old, and she had kept half of East Oakland running. She turned old men in their beds so the bed sores wouldn't come. She counted out other people's pills into other people's palms, morning and night, never once missed a dose in 11 years. She cooked, and she cleaned, and she lifted, and she listened, and she drove from one house to the next across the whole flat reach of the city with the low-fuel light burning orange the last week of every single month. And somewhere under the seat, or in the back of a drawer at home, were 2 gold hoop earrings she had not put on in longer than she could remember. There was a reason she had stopped wearing them. She just never let herself look straight at it. Her name was Cassandra Webb, and nobody had called her Cassandra since her mother passed. To the agency, she was an in-home support provider. To her clients, she was Cass, or Baby, or that sweet girl. Though she was nobody's girl and had not been sweet in the easy way for a long time. Her days started before the sun in other people's kitchens and ended after dark in other people's bathrooms. She knew the smell of 12 different houses, the menthol and the old carpet and the bacon grease better than she knew the smell of her own. She knew which client liked the radio low and which one cried at the gospel hour and which one called her by a dead daughter's name and had to be gentled out of it without ever being corrected. She gave them her hands and her back and the soft middle of her voice, all day, every day, and at the end of it she folded herself into the Corolla and drove home with nothing left over but the orange light on the dash. She lived down in Sobrante Park, in a unit she shared with a grown daughter who was between things and a grandbaby who was the light of her life. And she paid the rent, and she paid the lights, and she paid on a debt that had crept up on her the way water creeps up under a door. It was not a dramatic debt. That was almost the worst of it. There had been no fire, no flood, no one big disaster she could point to. It was a tire that blew on the freeway, and a tooth that obsessed, and a month her hours got cut when a client passed, and each time the credit card caught her when she fell, and then the card itself became the thing she was falling under. $9,000 spread across 2 cards and a payment plan at the dental office, and on $1,300 a month after the gas and the deductions, there was never one week where she could turn and face it. She made everybody else's plate first. She always had. At her own table she ate standing up, the burnt end, the piece nobody wanted, and she called that being a mother. At work she gave her best hours, her strong back, her patient hands. At church she was the first one there to set up and the last one out sweeping. Money came into her hands on the 1st and the 15th and ran straight out the other side to somebody's need. And she rode the rest of the month into that orange light, coasting, telling herself a good woman gives until there's nothing left. She had never once asked whether she was allowed to keep some. If you have ever been the one who feeds everybody and eats last, stay here with Cass. This was made for women like her, like you. The thing that finally bent her was small. She was at the pharmacy counter picking up a month of medication for Mr. Adler, her morning client, his blood pressure pills and his blood thinner and his little orange bottle of heart medicine, and she paid for all of it on his card and signed for it, careful, the way she handled everything that belonged to the people she cared for. And the pharmacist, a kind young man who knew her by sight, said, "And yours, Miss Webb? You were due for a refill 3 months back?" Cass smiled the smile she kept on the hook in her chest, and she said she'd get to it. She'd been saying she'd get to it for 3 months. Her own blood pressure medicine sat behind that counter unbought. because the copay was $11 she did not have a clear $11 for, not $11 that wasn't already promised to somebody. And she had decided, without ever deciding, that her own heart could wait where her clients' hearts could not. She drove home that night past the orange light coming on at the overpass, and she did the math she never let herself do. 11 years of never missing a dose for another living soul, 3 months of letting her own bottle sit empty on a shelf. She was the one who kept everybody in East Oakland alive, and she was running on fumes, in every way a woman can run on fumes. And the credit card statement on the kitchen counter said $9,000 in a number she could not look at without her chest going tight. A good woman gives until there's nothing left. Her mother had lived that and died on it, ate last her whole life, and went to her grave a worn-out spoon. And maybe that was why Cass had never tried to live any other way. The belief had cost her 60 years, and she had never once sent it the bill. Miss Geneva said the thing that cracked it, and she said it like she was complaining about the soup. Miss Geneva was 88, and Cass bathed her 3 evenings a week, lowered her into the warm water and washed her thin white hair and held her dignity for her when her own hands couldn't. Geneva had buried 2 husbands and outlived a son, and there was nothing left she was afraid to say. That evening, Cass was rushing, already late for the next house, drying Geneva's shoulders too fast, and the old woman caught her wrist with a grip stronger than it had any right to be. "You're always running," Geneva said. "Where are you running to, baby?" Then she let go and looked off at the window the way the old ones do, and she said it to the glass, not to Cass at all. The book says, "Love your neighbor as yourself." Most folks stop reading at neighbor. She didn't say it like wisdom. She said it like a woman noticing the weather. Then she asked Cass to bring her the lavender lotion, and the moment closed over like water, and Geneva never knew she dropped a stone straight through the middle of Cass's life. Cass finished the bath. She drove to the next house in the dark. But the words had gotten in somewhere under the smile, somewhere she couldn't reach to take them back out, and she sat in the car outside the next client's house with the engine ticking as it cooled, and she did not go in right away. Her hands were still damp from Geneva's bathwater. She wiped them on her scrub pants, and they were still damp, and she wiped them again, and the porch light of the house she was supposed to enter buzzed and flickered the way it always did, and she sat there in the dark a minute longer than she had ever let herself sit, her wet hands open in her lap, like they were waiting for something nobody was going to hand them. That night, she did something she had not done in years. She dug in the back of her dresser drawer, under the rolled-up socks and the expired insurance cards, and she found the little box, and inside it, the 2 gold hoops she had bought herself at 17 at the swap meet out by the Coliseum, paid for with her own first paycheck, the first thing she had ever owned that was only for being pretty, only for her. She held them in her palm in the dark. She did not put them on. She told herself it was foolish, a grown woman, a grandmother, and she put the box on top of the dresser instead of back in the drawer, and she went to bed with it sitting out where the morning light would find it. The little gold box was on the bathroom sink. The next she noticed it, and she didn't remember carrying it in there. She found it by the toothbrush, catching the light, and she stood there holding her toothbrush in one hand, looking at it. Her own hands had moved it in the dark without telling her. She picked the box up, and the hoops shifted inside with a small sound, gold on cardboard, and she held it longer than brushing her teeth should take. For a few days she went right back to being who she had always been, because that was easier than thinking. When her daughter came up short on the phone bill, Cass covered it without a word, her hand reaching for her wallet before her mind even shaped the question. When the church passed the plate a second time for the building fund, she gave a second time. When Mr. Adler's family forgot to leave the grocery money, she bought his groceries on her own card and told herself she would sort it out later. She was not deciding any of it. It was the oldest road in her, worn so deep her feet found it in the dark, and some nights she would catch herself at the bottom of it, with the wallet already open in her hands and not be able to say when she had taken it out. The math started following her around after that. She would be counting Mr. Adler's pills into the little plastic days of the week, and she would think about her own bottle sitting empty behind the pharmacy counter. She would be at the gas station putting $11 of regular into the Corolla, exactly the copay she didn't have, and the number would needle at her. She had told herself for years that there was no room. But standing at the pump one evening with the orange light finally off and the tank $10 fuller, she understood something she did not want to understand. There had been room for everyone. There had been room for 2 cards and a dental plan and a grown daughter and the church building fund and Mr. Adler's heart. The only person there had never been room for was the one holding the hose. So she tried something that felt like stealing from her own family. On the first of the month, before she paid one bill, before she handed $1 to one need, she took $30 out of the deposit and she folded it into the little gold box with the hoops, and she shut the lid. $30. Her 10th, near enough. It was nothing. It was less than she spent on other people's prescriptions in a single afternoon and never blinked. But it was the first time in her life that the woman holding the hose got watered first, and her hand shook doing it, and a voice that sounded exactly like her mother told her she was being selfish. A grown woman hiding money in a jewelry box while her child needed shoes. She almost put it back. She got the box down off the dresser 2 nights later when the daughter mentioned the shoes, and she had the lid open and her fingers on the folded bills, and the old habit had her arm halfway, the reflex of 60 years reaching to feed her own part to somebody else's need. And then she thought about her empty pill bottle. She thought about Geneva's wrist on hers. She closed the lid. She put the box back on the dresser. She bought the shoes another way, a layaway, a longer way, and she kept her 10th. By the 2nd month, the gold box had real weight to it, and she counted what was inside one night at the kitchen table, smoothing each bill flat the way you smooth a child's hair before church. $60. It was almost nothing against 9,000. But it was the first $60 in her whole life that had been hers before it was anybody else's, and she sat with it in the lamplight and felt a fullness she had no name for, until the old hollow rose up underneath it the way it always did, and whispered that a selfish woman hoards while her own family does without. She let the whisper talk itself out. She did not answer it. She put the box back on the dresser and turned off the light and lay there listening to the grandbaby breathe in the next room, and for once in her life she did not get up in the dark to give anything away. There's a kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. It comes from giving everybody your best hours for 30 years and learning, late and the hard way, that you were always allowed to keep a few of them for yourself. And then she did the harder thing, the thing that scared her more than the money. She stopped taking the overnight client. For 2 years, she had been driving across the city after a full day to sit up overnight with a man who needed turning every 2 hours, the extra money going straight onto the cards. And it was killing her by inches, and the cards barely moved because the interest ate the extra before she even got it home. It was the working more that her mother had taught her, the only answer she knew: do more, give more, lift more, until the body breaks. She gave the overnight up. She did the thing that felt lazy and wrong and selfish all at once. She worked her regular hours, she kept her 10th, and instead of chasing $1 more with the last of her body, she sat down one Sunday after church with all the statements spread on the table and called the dental office and asked in a steady voice for a lower number she could actually carry. And they gave it to her because all those years she could have asked and never had. 9 months. That was how long it took. Not by working herself into the grave her mother had worked herself into, by keeping her 10th before the river ran out, every 1st, every 15th, by stopping the bleed instead of pumping in more blood. $9,000. The 2 cards closed and the dental plan paid on $1,300 a month. And the orange light still came on some months at the overpass, but it did not frighten her anymore, because there was a gold box on her dresser with her own name on everything inside it. She bought her own medicine. That was the first thing she did with the room she had made. She walked up to the pharmacy counter and she paid the $11 copay for her own heart out loud in front of the kind young pharmacist. And she said, "This one's mine," and her voice did not waver. Then she went out to the car and she opened the little gold box and she took out the 2 hoops and she put them in her ears for the first time in years. Right there in the rearview mirror in the pharmacy parking lot, a 57-year-old woman tilting her head to catch the gold, and she drove home with them on. And at the red lights, she kept glancing at herself, not to fix anything, just to see. There was a young aide the agency paired her with that spring. To train, couldn't have been more than 23. A girl named Destiny with a baby at home and a tiredness around the eyes that Cass knew from the inside of her own skull. They rode together between clients, and Cass watched her eat lunch, standing up out of a plastic bag. The way Cass had eaten her whole life, watched her pay for a client's prescription out of her own pocket because the family was slow to pay her back. Watched her run on fumes with a smile screwed on tight. "How long since you filled your own tank?" Cass asked her one afternoon in the parked car between houses. "Not the car. You." The girl laughed it off the way Cass would have. Said she'd get to it. Said it the exact way Cass used to say it. So Cass reached up and touched one of the gold hoops in her own ear, and she told the girl about a woman who kept all of East Oakland alive and let her own heart medicine sit empty on a shelf for 3 months because she thought that was what love looked like. She told her about a 10th, about a gold box, about the woman holding the hose getting watered first, not last. The book says, "Love your neighbor as yourself," Cass said, and she heard Miss Geneva in her own mouth, and her own mother in it too. But the tired old part of it lifted now, turned all the way over. Most folks stop reading at neighbor, you start reading the rest. Destiny didn't say much. The strong ones never do at first. But a few weeks later, Cass saw her at the pharmacy counter on a Friday, picking up a small white bag with her own name on it. And the girl caught Cass's eye across the store and touched her own ear, where she'd put in a little pair of studs, and the 2 of them just stood there a second, 2 tired women in scrubs, seeing each other all the way down. Cass saw herself at every age in that look. The girl at the swap meet with the brand new hoops, the grandmother coasting on fumes, the woman in the rear view learning her own face again. Comment down below. Day 1, and tell me the one small thing you're going to keep for yourself this week before you give the rest away. Your 10th, your medicine, your own name on the bag. Write it down here so it's real, because I read every single one of these, and if you know a woman who pours into everybody and runs herself dry, a daughter, a sister, your own mama, send this to her tonight. Let her know she's allowed to fill her own tank first. If a story like this meets you where you live, go on and subscribe and tap that bell so the next one finds you. This place was built for women like Cass, like you. And if you want to take that first step today, there's a free app that can help you bring a little order to all of it. 1/10 at a time, the way Cass started with a gold box on a dresser. The link is right there in the comments. You can't keep everybody else's light on. If you let your own go dark, fill yours first. I'll see you in the next one.